Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Shield,
And I'm Benjamin Shield.
and this is Getting Inside the Right Male Mind. We are so excited to be here today because we really, what we're about to talk about is one of the cornerstones of the work that we do with women. And it is one of the most challenging parts of this whole process is to speak your truth and to be able to ask for what you want and need in a relationship. Men aren't mind readers, and we really do have to learn how to communicate our needs to men. It is very important. We have gotten into this mindset where people think, oh, well, I want a man, but I don't need a man. And this is really erroneous. You don't need a man to put a roof over your head, pay your bills, buy you a house, provide food for you. But what you do need is emotional connection. You need to be partners and to be able to do things for each other. Men do things for women that nobody else can in our lives. And we do something for men. We do things for men. We give them things that they need. And these are basic human needs. We all have a need to be needed. And if you don't allow somebody to know how important he is in your life and what he can do to be a partner with you in your life, and you're expecting him to read your mind and just figure it out on his own, it might not ever happen in the way that you're dreaming for it to happen. I'm in the process of creating some new material, and I was writing this morning. It's interesting about how when I was dating and I had done all this personal growth work and therapy, and after many, many years of working with some renowned teachers and mentors, I realized that as much as I had grown to love and like and know myself, I was still terrified to sit across from a man on a date, especially a man that I was really attracted to, because I was afraid to express my needs. And as much as I told myself, oh, well, I don't want a man, or I don't need a man, I want a man, there were real things that I was longing for a man to do for me. And if I couldn't express those needs, I was never going to have them met by a partner. So,
Right. And so often in the course, we deal with issues where women have had trouble with, that hard conversation, where they've just, it appears that everything is fine for the man. He likes it just the way things are, but it's not fine for the woman, because very often a relationship could be episodic. It could be a series of dates, which are all nice, or weekend trips, but it doesn't progress. And so often, one of the conversations and one of the issues of asking for what a person needs is to be able to have that conversation that either moves the relationship forward, or she has to know that this isn't working for her for what she ultimately wants.
yeah, I checked in with one of our clients, and she realized that she was having her 6 month anniversary with the man that she was dating. And she realized it really hadn't gone anywhere in
Yeah.
6 months, except that they had added, sex to the equation. But it wasn't really progressing. He wasn't integrating her into his life, introducing or her to his kids and to his family, and wanting to spend more time with her. He was perfectly fine with the way it was. He was getting his needs met without having to make any kind of commitment to her.
And I think men can compartmentalize relationships. So they think it's absolutely fine if they don't introduce them to their friends, their family,
Mm-hmm.
their colleagues. And they may not feel that that's a problem. Because they're well, I see her twice a week. We have a great time, and what's the problem? Well, the problem is that things aren't. He's not integrating her into his life, and vice versa. He may not be interested in meeting her friends and colleagues and family and all. So having this conversation may delineate that the relationship, ultimately isn't what someone deeply needs, and is the dream relationship, or it may wake someone up and move the relationship forward. But one will never know unless one has those difficult conversations.
And the conversation, when we're going to talk first about why why women avoid having this conversation, but the thing that you need to remember as you listen to this whole conversation is that having this conversation in the right way and at the right time is an invitation to deeper intimacy. It is an invitation for a man to come closer to you. We have a wonderful woman in our mastermind program who I just so admire the way she navigated her relationship. She met a man who had been in a 30+ year marriage, and he had very much never really been close to his wife. He had married her young. She was very beautiful, and they never really had a close emotional bond. And this client, rather than just assuming that he was emotionally unavailable and deciding that it wasn't going to go anywhere because he was not progressing the relationship on his end, she very artfully worked with us, and is also a very intelligent woman on her own. And because she was willing to have these conversations and create this beautiful space and this invitation for him to come closer to her, they now have a pied-à-terre, a little apartment that they rented together in New York City. I think they live in another state, adjacent state, but they now have gotten a beautiful little pied-à-terre in New York City, and they're planning travels together. They have some wonderful things on the horizon. And he really, every time she opened up that door, he took a step closer to her. So just because a man isn't initiating this, do not make the assumption that a man doesn't want to come closer to you and just stay locked in that fearful place where you become so resentful and obsessed and overthinking that you actually do push him away. So babe, let's go to why. So my point was, before we go to this, keep in mind that these conversations can bring a man closer to you, even if he isn't coming close to you of his own accord. You're opening up that door and creating that space for that to happen. You are making an invitation for a man to come closer to you and create a life with you.
Exactly. So there are two issues that may exist. One is the issue of the relationship. There may be some issues that are unresolved, but the other issue is the lack of communication on both people's parts. But the most important is the woman's communication of asking for what she needs. And some of the issues of why a woman may be reluctant to have this conversation is that she may feel, have the fear of rejection. Like, well, things are going good. We're seeing each other twice a week. We have great dinners. We have good sex. We have an occasional weekend trip. I don't want to rock the boat, by scaring him. So, a person can fear rejection by bringing up this conversation. And also that we're sitting across from someone And we may fear that that partner, that person may not be willing to meet our needs. And that's very fearful.
Or not even just not willing, but also not capable.
Exactly.
That's the other thing.
Mhm.
He may not be capable. He may not have the resources. He may have a huge alimony from a previous marriage and not be able to. And we're afraid of answers we may get that will make it clear that it really can't go anywhere.
Yeah. And some women don't want to appear needy, like by asking for things when things seem to be okay for the guy. If things are good, that he's bringing her flowers, again, great dinners, trips, things like that. But it's not the relationship she needs. But if she brings her needs forward, she may feel like, oh, he's going to think that I'm being needy, when he's doing all these wonderful things for me.
Yeah, like it's not good enough or I'm hard to please.
Yeah.
But nobody, again, can read your mind. Nobody knows what your needs are. And one thing about men is that they just assume that if you're not saying anything,
Right.
things are going great.
Right.
They think they're knocking it out of the park. And so they need you to let them know what your needs are, but to do it in a very loving, non-shaming way, which we'll get into. But you've got to let them know, hey, I love gifts, or I love quality time, or acts of service really make me feel cared for. But if you do not communicate those things, a man is going to think, hey, I'm doing a great job and everything's fine.
Yeah. And so often there's a basic lack of self-confidence, I may not deserve to have this conversation. I may not deserve to ask for more than what he's giving me, and so we're afraid to assert ourselves and really ask these important questions and have these important discussions. And we're also concerned that if we bring up the conversation, our partner, the gentleman sitting across from the woman, may be disengaged. He may just be, fitting her into his life and really not engaged. And that is a very painful thing to come face to face with.
Or he may be avoidant, or the minute, he may be fine as long as all of the energy and effort is coming from him. But the minute a woman asks for something, then they start pulling back and start doing that anxious avoidant dance, which we're all, many of us have been there and we're so afraid of.
Yeah. And men are often afraid of these conversations.
Yeah.
We'll do what we can to avoid. When a woman says, honey, we need to talk, and when that has happened with me, the first thing I do is I stop breathing. And then my cortisol levels, one of my stress hormones, my cortisol levels just skyrocket. And then I just assume when she says we need to talk, I just assume I did something wrong, and then this immediately makes me feel shame. And shame is perhaps one of the worst, if not the worst thing a man could feel. And so the shame puts me in a defensive posture. And this defensive posture keeps me from feeling compassion for my partner's emotion because I'm on the defensive.
Before you even have the conversation.
Before we even have the conversation. And that my lack of feeling of compassion further stirs her feelings of anxiety and fear.
Mm-hmm.
And this causes disconnection for both people. This is before we even have the conversation.
Yeah.
And the disconnection makes it the least opportune time to talk about any issue. So, before the conversation ever happens, the starting it with, honey, we need to talk, or I need to talk to you later, or we need to talk later in the week. That is horrible because men will just assume the very worst. Most men will get defensive, distracted, irritated, fidgety. They'll roll their eyes or completely shut down when they're confronted with anger from a woman. And he disguises his feelings of shame and inadequacy with annoyance or impatience or anger. He feels like he's failing her, and these are the ways that he can respond to it, not always in the most healthy ways. A man is never going to say, I've been dying to share my feelings about our life together, and I especially want to hear how you feel about us and what you want for us.
Not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. Not going to happen. A man is never going to say, honey, I've been dying to share my feelings about our life together, and I especially want to hear about how you feel about us and what you want for us.
Why is that never going to happen, honey?
Well, because first, for very often for a man, things are going well just the way they are.
Mm-hmm.
And second, if there's a discussion and a woman begins to get into the things that there are short failings, then he feels like he's failing her. He feels shame. And there's that anger and irritation and annoyance and rolling the eyes and disconnection and all of that. So,
and women sometimes think, I'll come to you and say, is there anything I'm doing wrong? Like, I'd love to know, so that then they can tell you, because there's some things that I would love to share with you. Right. And what would a conversation like that do?
Well, first, a man is afraid to say, because it may open up this whole conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And as you say, it can blow back on him.
Mm-hmm.
But he also doesn't want to, he's having a nice day. This is a day off. There's a football game later and all of this. And if the day starts with, tell me, is there anything I'm doing wrong, honey, to a man? And that could just tilt the whole day on its side.
And he's probably been pulled into that trap before, and he knows exactly where it goes.
Exactly. And it's not going to go upward. It's going to go downward. It's going to spiral downward.
And probably lead to more conversations. And, well, why did you say that? And how can I do this better?
Or her defensiveness.
Right. Her saying, her coming back and saying, well, you said this, and I thought I was being so blah, 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 blah. And I want to know, why do you think that? And it gets into a whole ongoing thing that goes from here, like an ink stain. It just bleeds out into something horrible. Yeah. Women think that's being constructive, and and a lot of times the guy will just say, oh no, I'm happy with everything, it's all going great.
Right. Even if there are some short failings, some shortcomings. Men live on the precipice of shame, which is one of the worst things, if not, as I said, the worst thing.
What does that mean, that a man lives on the precipice of shame?
Well, a man wants to be a woman's hero, and he wants to, he's working hard often, and he may not always be on the mark. Sometimes he may be well off the mark, but he feels like he's doing a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like my father had 3 jobs, and if he had a conversation, and he'd get up early, he'd come home late, and all of that. And he was doing the best he could. But if he and my mom had a conversation, she would come up with a whole list of shortcomings, and he would feel shame and that there's nothing he could do about it, because he has to do these things. He doesn't, and he also may not have the psychological skills to deal with it. So he just feels shame, and then that shame again can turn into anger, disconnection, dissociation, annoyance, and irritation, and distance between two people.
I think women just do not understand how deep this goes for men. Like there have been things that I've said to you where I know you felt shame. You know it's never my intention to do that. But even if you feel that you disappointed me, or oh, I should have known that,
Men live on the precipice of shame, where women live on the precipice of fear and of fear. So they're afraid to have the conversation. They're afraid to rock the boat. They're afraid of the reaction that might even be anger coming back at them. So men live on the precipice of shame. Women live on the precipice of fear.
Well, and I think it goes back to men want respect and they want to feel respected, and women want to feel cherished and adored.
Exactly.
And so it's like, if you reject me as a woman, I am going to feel like I'm not worthy, like I'm not a woman who is worth being cherished and adored, and having a man who would do those things for me. And for a man, he feels emasculated. He feels like he's not a man, and so it speaks to these very core needs within each of us. Yeah, it's very painful.
Yeah. And so building on what you just said, that that men want to avoid shame, and whatever that shame invokes, whatever feelings. And so the way that a man would deal with shame is to avoid whatever that would invoke shame. And while women deal with fear, the way that women deal with fear is to talk about it. So men, don't want to talk about it because it will invoke shame, and because women may feel fearful, they want to talk about it. Mm-hmm. So we've got these two different ways of dealing with these deep, deep emotions.
Well, and part of what I really want to say to women, which is so important, you can talk about it. That's the beauty of this. You can. And that's what this whole episode is about, is empowering you to be able to have those conversations, but to do them with heart and compassion and with a deep understanding of men and who they are, so that you can be this safe space, this beautiful, safe space for a man to bring his whole self into these conversations and into a relationship with you. So few women know how to do this in a kind, loving, respectful way that is inviting rather than punishing or shaming or emasculating. And when you learn how to do this in the right way, men don't have to be afraid. You can bring them into a conversation where they feel received and open, where they really can share their deepest feelings with you.
And men want to avoid these conversations because they want to avoid feeling shame. And they may feel that talking about something may only make something worse. And that's usually from past experience or bad counseling. In years and years and years ago, I was in counseling, and I was with someone, and through a series of counselors, it always made it worse. From my perspective, we would leave, it would be terrible during the session. And then we would say, I'm going to the delicatessen, can I get you a sandwich for you? But, he's afraid that just talking about it is going to make it worse. And he's also afraid that if two people talk about it, that he's going to discover that you're more unhappy than he thought.
Right.
He thought things were pretty good, and then all these things are uncovered. And a lot of men are uncomfortable about talking about their feelings, and
they don't even know how.
They don't know how. There was a time in my life, before counseling, decades ago, that if you asked what I was feeling, I probably couldn't tell you. I probably couldn't tell you. And I was always a sensitive male,
Mm-hmm.
but I just didn't know how to connect with my feelings. And which means I was not only afraid of my feelings, but I was afraid of the other person's feelings.
Wow.
And sometimes talking about an issue can bring up bad memories of prior talks about the issue or other things, events that happened. So he's afraid of that, of just, rekindling old things that have kind of died down. And he might feel that she will leave him because of what's uncovered by talking about it. Men live on the precipice of fear as well as shame. And he may not think that the relationship has any problems. I'm fine. I'm really good. Bring me another beer.
And also there's this need, I think, for both men and women to have a deeper emotional connection, but it might look different for a man and a woman. Men, they usually speak fewer words, even if they are men who are in touch with their thoughts and feelings. For the most part, many men are they say less. They're much more to the point than women are. Women are very they process. They like to sit and just process and think over and over and over again about the same things. And we think in circles. We don't think linearly. And men are very much to the point. And it's sometimes not even that they're not really saying something. They may say exactly what they need to say. And it may be actually very deep and emotional and vulnerable for that man, but it may be one or two complete sentences, and that's it.
Yeah. And to sit next to each other on a couch in silence can be so endearing to a man and unnerving for a woman.
Sometimes we'll spend a day watching TV or, just being together, not talking or interacting. And you will just say, oh, that was such a great day, and we may not have actually communicated much.
But we're very present with each other. And we almost every evening ends with us being on the couch in the TV room, and you're laying across the couch, and your head's on my lap, and I'm stroking your hair, and asking you, are you awake? And I'm awake. And so I wind up seeing the program like 2 or 3 times. But it's endearing, and there's not a lot of conversation.
No.
But it brings us closer and closer. It's a beautiful way to end a day, and we have rituals throughout the day that we do things like that with each other.
And we go away, we go out, and we love being together and talking, or having dinner.
We have long conversations.
And a lot of fun. Yeah.
I think one other issue is that a man might be afraid that he won't be able to change enough to make a woman happy.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're not this, you don't do this enough. You can't, you don't have these qualities enough. And if this comes out in a conversation, he's afraid that, well, that's not me.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't change enough to make her happy. So I'm just going to avoid the conversation.
Yeah. Or the kiss of death in a relationship is when a man says, I don't think I can make you happy.
Yeah.
And most women in a conversation like that will say, oh, but you do make me happy. There's just these few things, And a man feels, oh my God, that's one thing after another. And he really, what he hears is all the things that she's not happy with, but she doesn't, a lot of women don't say constantly, oh my God, you're my hero. I love that you're so sweet. You're so thoughtful. You're so kind. Going to the Gottmans, which I am not the world's biggest Gottman fan. I will put that out there. I think they've done some good work. I like them, but they do say, and I don't know where they get the statistic, that they're sitting around in laboratories and trying to make scientific calculations, but they make a point. They say in happy couples, they see basically a ratio of 5 positive compliments to 1 negative, right? So 5 positive pieces of feedback to 1 negative piece of feedback. And in bad relationships, dysfunctional ones, there tends to be many more negative comments to positive ones.
I think one of the concerns about a man when a woman gives a compliment, that it's going to be followed by, like it's the lead up, like, honey, I really appreciate all the things you do around the house. And the man's thinking, okay, here it comes.
But
so for a man, it is so important for a woman to be clear and direct.
Well, and just to say, I really like to say, I really appreciate all the things you do around the house.
Period.
Period.
And then another conversation is, being very clear and direct of, because a man just wants to hear it. He doesn't want to hear a preamble.
Right.
It's sometimes I think about a Gilbert and Sullivan song where there's this long preamble before it goes into the actual song. So just get to the song.
Yeah.
And he's just waiting, and the longer the preamble,
right,
or the circumvention around the real issue, the more anxious he gets.
Right. And it's so simple. I think what most women don't realize is it's as simple as saying, hey, you know what would really make me happy? Yeah. I'd love it if you take out the trash more often. That would make me so happy.
Perfect. And you used an I message, which is cliche, but it's true. You're not saying, why don't you take out the trash? You should be taking out the trash. What would make me happy?
Yeah.
And then, for the most part, men just want to make women happy. That's a purpose in life.
Yeah.
And so they just need to know how, and they need to be asked in the right way, or just the statement, what would make me happy? So happy. You would make me so happy.
And you'll get great sex later tonight if you.
Exactly. What a couple trash cans can do.
A couple of trips to the trash can. So here are 10. Can you give us 10 tips for how to ask a man for what for what we want in a relationship in a positive way, babe?
Well, first, as I mentioned, being clear and direct. It's so important for a man because, as you say, we're linear. And we know something is, there's going to be a wind up and a pitch. And the quicker it comes, the more palatable it is.
So like not looking in the refrigerator and going, God, there's nothing to eat in here. There's really nothing in the fridge. Wow, I can't believe we don't have any food. Yeah. Saying, wow, there's nothing in the fridge. Would you mind running to the grocery store and grabbing us a couple of things?
It would make me so happy
if
you would.
It would make me so happy if you would.
Yeah. And I think it's also important before we have a conversation is to really be clear about what you want. Take the time to identify exactly what it is. And so taking out the trash may be an issue, but it may not be the fundamental issue that the real conversation is about. In my relationship before ours, well over 20 years ago, I realized after 1 year being in the relationship that I really didn't want to have kids. And it was very clear that she did. And so every argument we had, whether, I like the color blue, she likes the color green, was you SOB, you want a kid, and that was the real discussion to have, because it would avoid all of these passive aggressive arguments that really weren't hitting the mark.
Mhm.
So really being very clear and direct about what the issue is.
And it's hard sometimes to understand what's really going on, That isn't always easy. I don't think she or even you really fully knew what was driving all of that fighting.
Mhm.
I think at the end, when you walked away, you knew. But I think for so long, like, I know my ex-husband and I had financial issues, money issues, and I think it drove a lot of discontent in the relationship, but I don't know if we could have reduced it down to its essence.
Mhm.
And I do love what you're saying here, that it would be very important to sit back and say, what is the fundamental driver of our discontent, and see if you can get to that core issue, because if that doesn't get addressed, all of this other stuff, all of this other discontent is never going to go away.
And I like what you said about using I statements. It would make me so happy if this could happen, rather than you don't do this, you're not making it happen, I'm very disappointed. All of those things would be a buzzkill.
Mhm.
Where the other, that you would make me so happy, would uplift the entire conversation and
Mhm.
relationship. And we want to listen to our partner. If we say something, we don't want to just leave something at the doorstep and walk away. We really want to open that door and listen to what they have to say. If, let's say, a relationship is just episodic, it's going well, well enough. There's, nice dinners, there's intimacy, but it's not going anywhere. And, and a woman has this conversation where it might be like an ultimatum, uh, uh, and so for her to invite, in a very gentle way, a real invitation,
Mhm.
not just say, well, what do you think about it? But I really, I would cherish knowing what you think about it. And he may think, I've gone further in relationships like this and they've always failed.
Yeah.
So I just want to keep it the way it is because I love you so much, or I care about you so much. So, listening to what the partner has to say, and what the partner has to say may be wonderful, but it may not be at all,
Right.
but it will be more definitive and more mutual.
Mhm. And there's another one that I don't want to miss here, which is choosing the right time and place to have these conversations.
Exactly. Sometimes something is on our mind and we just, like just before we go to sleep, and we don't want to go to sleep without the discussion. And for a guy, if he has this discussion just before, it's bedtime, he's going to be up, he's going to be ruminating. And one person may feel like, well, I got that off my chest. And the other person says, like, I can't believe she said this. What am I going to do about it? And all of this. It's a terrible time. And there are good times where spending quiet moments together, walking together. And there are times where it just would be a recipe for failure.
Yeah, and you don't have to say to a guy, we need to talk. You can find an intimate moment when you're walking, when you're together, to say, there's something I would love to share with you. And you make it much more of an invitation.
Right.
There's something I've been wanting to share with you.
And is this a good time?
Yeah. Is this a good time to have this conversation? Or would you be open to hearing what I'd like to share? so that you don't blindside a man, or you don't uh, get, but the problem is that women are so afraid, these strong, independent women are so afraid to have these kinds of conversations with men that they want to like make it a discuss. It's almost like it needs to be like a business meeting, right? We're going to schedule this meeting because there's these things I need to talk to you about. And it really is like that, and it's so intimidating for the man. So it's so much nicer for the woman to be able to understand that there's a right time and a right way to enter gently into these conversations.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to, before words are spoken, to think about, are these words going to bring us closer together, or are they going to take us farther apart?
Yeah.
So asking for what we need can truly bring people together.
Mm-hmm.
It can create intimacy, vulnerability, closeness. But if we choose the wrong words, they could be like a weapon.
Yeah.
That just take people further apart. Well, I got that off my chest, and now the relationship is that much worse, where it could have been that much better.
Or even passive aggressively saying, there's ways I think that women think that we are being direct, but we're actually being attacking. And so there's an instance of a woman who we worked with, and she was really having this great relationship with this guy that she very much liked. And at some point in their interaction, she had told him that about her birthday, but it was some months earlier, and then the birthday was coming up, and I think she was, from what I recall, she was upset because he didn't remember the birthday and say, oh, your birthday's coming up, and he didn't mark it on the calendar. Now, I know you would have done something like that. I don't remember dates. Sometimes I have to stop when I'm filling in a form and putting in your birthday. And I even have to stop and like just remember, was it 1951 or 1952? So not everybody is the same, but she was upset that he didn't remember it. And so she mentioned that her girlfriends were taking her out for her birthday. He assumed that she had plans and didn't want to interfere with her plans. And what she really wanted was for him to say, oh, well, I would like to take you out for your birthday. And when he didn't do that, and she didn't ask, she didn't say, but I'd much rather go out with you. The day came and went, and then the following day, when he asked how things were, she said, well, I got something from everybody except from the one person I really wanted something from. So she shamed him because he didn't put all the pieces together in his male brain. And that was really shaming, and it ended the relationship. It ended the relationship, and she thought she was saying it in a nice way, the one person I really wanted something from, but what he heard was, oh my God, I failed.
Yeah.
It was terrible.
Yeah. So often that a conversation could lead to ultimatums, or something that is without compromise, like, this is what I need, or we need to split up, or something dire. And so entering a conversation with the idea of really listening, and perhaps seeing the other person's viewpoint where there could be a compromise. Like there could be, I can't go on like this. We're only seeing each other on Tuesdays and Saturdays, and this isn't worth to me. And if we can't see each other more, the relationship is over. And he may say, I've been working on this project for 2 years. It's almost at a conclusion, and I will be having more time, and I'm giving everything I can right now, something like that. So just hearing the other person, and perhaps saying that, making a compromise. Well, when this project is over, let's see if we could meet 3 or 4 times, you know, whatever it might be, that would be comfortable for both people. You know? And I think it's also important to be patient, because when we ask for something, it's not like a light switch. You know, sometimes, particularly for a man, to kind of mold into a new way of being. It's the best way I could think of it. That it may not be like, well, I told him this, and you know, he's not that much changed the next morning, but it's on his mind. Believe me, as a man, it is on his mind, and he will find little ways to begin to accommodate to that new way. You know?
But he also is going to really dig in his heels and resist if you make demands or you push or whatever. There's a natural mechanism inside a man, in a man's brain, that he won't be pushed. He's not going to be forced. He's not going to be told what to do unless he's a pleaser. Yeah. And most women don't want that either. Yeah. So it's very important. You know, I think that there is a fallacy that we all have, women and men alike, where we think, oh, well, I figured it out. I get it. So suddenly there's just supposed to be this automatic, you know, personality change. But getting something intellectually and actually being able to integrate those changes and build the awareness of when and how we're doing things, and then switch those behaviors, you may be way more aware of the things a man is doing that trigger you or that you don't like. He, from his own perspective, may not be seeing it in the same way. So it takes patience and time for somebody to actually sit back. Like sometimes I'll say to you, wow, I didn't see myself doing that. If you know, when you see me exhibiting that behavior, could you please let me know, because I may not be seeing it the same way you are. So I sometimes need your help to build that awareness so that I can stop doing those things, because it's not as clear to me.
And you know, we going back to having the clarity of what we want to ask for is really identifying any stories that we've been telling ourselves about why our needs haven't been satisfied. In other words, we could be creating an entire story where it may be fiction, but we really want to identify what story we're creating without communication. Because without communication, that we're left to create stories in our own head.
Right.
And often they're, as I say, fictitious, and without that communication. So first really identifying, well, you know, like, you know, I feel that he doesn't love me because he's not doing this for me, or he's not showing up in this way. And hearing the other person, it may be an entirely different story. So first identifying our own stories and what we're bringing to the conversation, and being open to having those stories begin to dissolve.
Yeah, and Don Miguel would have said, don't make any assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
Don't make assumptions about what someone else's intentions are. Talk to that person, because everybody sees things. You know, right now we're sitting face to face. You see the window over here. You see a whole different perspective than I do. I'm looking at the Buddhas and the Balinese doll behind you, and I see a whole different viewpoint from where I'm sitting.
Yeah, and where we're sitting could mean all the stories that have been in our lives,
right,
and relationships that have led to this conversation.
Yeah.
And so it creates stories like, well, you know, he's not doing this. And if we've had, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 relationships, you know, we're just going to fit in the unknown to the known. We're just going to create, you know, fit those into stories that have already existed in the past, but may not be true for the present.
And something that is so important for people to remember, even in the worst of scenarios, you may have dated, attracted, addicts your entire life, but that doesn't mean that the man sitting in front of you is an addict. And it's easy to project, oh my gosh, in social situations, I see him have one or two drinks. And then your mind starts going into, oh, I need to break, he's an alcoholic. But it doesn't mean that every person that you go out with who has a drink or two in a social situation over the course of a 3-hour dinner is an alcoholic just because they drink. There are people who are perfectly comfortable with having alcohol who aren't necessarily alcoholics. So you cannot just take your past experiences and then superimpose them on everybody. You have to talk about those things.
And I find that as a man, in concluding, that if there are gentle conversations, that a man can actually, if he doesn't always welcome the conversations, that he can assimilate them, and it could bring two people closer. The whole idea of this talk and of what we all want in life is intimacy, is closeness, is partnership. We want to do everything we can to foster that. And so, yes, there needs to be those difficult conversations, but with the goal of bringing two people closer together rather than bringing them apart.
And women need to ask for what they want in a loving, kind, compassionate, non-shaming, non-emasculating way, but in a way that is positive and inviting and allows the right man to come closer to her. The right man will want to be your hero. He's going to want to do wonderful things to make you happy or happier. And in my first marriage, I didn't get that. I didn't get it because I was so afraid to ask, because I thought I would be disappointed. I knew my ex-husband. It really, in my heart of hearts, I knew he wasn't capable. I knew he didn't have the means and the wherewithal to do the kinds of things I was longing for a man to do for me. And when I suddenly looked around and I saw all these women in Los Angeles, men were falling over themselves to do things for them, I realized it was because I never felt deserving. I told myself I was deserving, but I was afraid to ask and find out if a man would do those things for me. And when I learned about men and I learned how to really respect men and allow them to be who they are with me, I found a man who would go to the moon and back for me, who would do anything in his power to make my dreams come true.
It's true.
And
Very true.
And believe me, fairy tales can be real. We can find our Prince Charming, and our every dream can come true when we learn how to love and respect each other. All right. Thank you, baby.
Thank you.
I want to thank you also from the bottom of my heart. I know you took such beautiful time and care to prepare this talk.
Thank you.
And I'm very grateful to you for the love and the thought that you put into these conversations and into preparing for them. So thank you for doing that.
It's my pleasure.
Oh, well, I love you so much. You're such a wonderful, wonderful man. All right. I'm Lisa Shield.
And I'm Benjamin Shield.
And you can learn more about the work we do by going to lisashield.com. It is filled with testimonials and live videos and conversations on our praise page of many of the women who have worked with us in the past and found their Benjamins, guys just like this. He's not the only one. I got a good one, but so can you. And if you're interested in working with us, click the button all over the website. to watch my free presentation. At the end of that presentation is a link to sign up for a breakthrough call with a member of my team. If you do fit the criteria for working with us, we don't work with everyone who does a call because we also want to make sure that our program is a good match for you. So please know, if you do a call with us, we really have your back. We are listening on those calls to see if we really believe that we can help you. So know that we're not just going to try to enroll you in a course or in a program because you get on a call with us. We are very respectful of you, and it must be a good fit from both sides. But if you are a good fit, we can change your life forever. So please sign up for a call. Also, send us your suggestions for future topics. I do believe that this came from one of our listeners. And also send us or give us your thumbs up, your likes, your hearts. It means the world to us to get real, honest, positive feedback from all of you. Our listeners are our lifeline because we can't do what we do without you. And it is our goal to change the world one love life at a time. So please let us know how we can best serve you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for your time. And finally, tell everyone you know, your brothers, your fathers, mothers, uncles, aunts, sisters, brothers, your girlfriends, your guy friends, your colleagues, everybody you know about these broadcasts. We're saying what we say in a very different way than many or most other coaches say it. So please know the guardian of your soul is out there searching for you right now. The single most important thing we can do with our time is to be looking for love. This is now more than ever. You want to find your person. Come back and see us again, and thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.